Hey, this is Curt Iles, Creek Bank YouTube channel. I hope you'll check it out. Let your friends know about it. Our website is www.creekbank.net. I'm coming to you today from my soundstage at the old house in Dry Creek, Louisiana. I'm out on the porch, and you can hear it if you listen good. It's raining. It's raining on a tin roof, and there is no sound better in the world than rain on a tin roof, especially when there's no insulation. So I'm just going to get quiet for 7 or 8 seconds, let you listen to it. Get my hat straight there. What I want to do today, I just want to tell you probably one of my favorite stories. I speak a lot, and I don't tell the same stories every time, but there's several of my stories that I always know I'm going to tell because it's a good story. And this story I'm going to tell you, the dead end road, it's just funny. But also at the end, it has a lesson and a truth to it. So here we go. Dead end roads. Right now, I'm at the end of a dead-end road, Clayton Iles Road. It runs out. You can't go to anywhere once you get to my mom and dad's house and the old house. Well, in Dry Creek, I've always been part of the cemetery. Now, if you're not country, you can't understand how important a community cemetery is. Dry Creek Cemetery has been there for well over 100 years, and it's just a labor of love for those of us that work with it. When I lived in Dry Creek, I was on the cemetery board, made up mostly of older men, and one of my main members is Mr. Frank Miller. Now, Mr. Frank, at the time of this story, he was probably early 80s, still getting around good and still involved in everything going on in Dry Creek. Member of the cemetery board. One morning, he walks in my office at Dry Creek Camp, and I can tell he's a little agitated. Mr. Frank was a shorter man, and his face was kind of red. I said, Mr. Frank, what in the world's wrong? He said, Curt, have you been to the cemetery? I said, not in the last week or so. He says, they have put the Polish jury, that's who puts such signs on parish roads. The Polish jury has put up a sign that says dead end on the road to our cemetery. And I know you're probably laughing too. I couldn't laugh because he was serious about it. So I was laughing on the inside, but not on the outside, because I could tell he was serious. He said, we've got to get the Polish jury to do something about that sign. We can't have a dead-end sign going to the cemetery. The whole world's going to be laughing at us. I thought, I'm laughing right now inside. I just can't show it. So Mr. Frank, he left, went on. I closed the door of my office, sat down, and I had a good belly laugh. Got my truck and drove down there. Sure enough, there it was. A yellow and black sign right where you turn off to Dry Creek Cemetery Road. Big as you can be. Dead end. Well, I didn't think about it a lot other than laugh about it. About a week later, Mr. Frank comes in my office again. This time he looks a little more relaxed. He said, you remember that dead end sign? I said, yes, sir, I remember it well. He said, I've got a solution to it. I said, okay, what do you have, Mr. Frank? He said, well, we're going to get the Polish jury to remove it and put up a sign to take its place that says cul-de-sac. I said, Mr. Frank, what'd you say? Cul-de-sac. I said, okay. He says, cul-de-sac. It means dead end in French. I said, Mr. Frank, the problem is no one in Dry Creek's going to know how to spell it. And no one in Dry Creek's going to know it. That's what it means. And I hurt his feelings because he was serious about that cul-de-sac sign. And anyway, he left out. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think we ever talked about it again. The dead end sign stayed up for a while. But one day, I go to the cemetery, it's gone. It's been pulled up by the pole and everything. And in my mind, I could see Mr. Frank in his little Plymouth car in the dead of night sneaking down there and pulling it up. But I didn't figure he did it. But I suppose he might have known about it. I never did have the heart to ask him about it, because I didn't want to hurt his feelings, and I didn't want him to have to lie to me or tell me what the truth was. Probably 2 or 3 years after this story, when Mr. Frank died, he had a fine funeral in Dry Creek. He deserved a good funeral. And I did his eulogy. On the way to the cemetery, I rode with the other pallbearers, and when we turned that curve where the dead-end sign had been, one of his grandsons said, "Mr. Curt, you remember that dead-end sign?" I said, "How could I forget it?" He said, "Paul," that's what they called Mr. Frank, "Paul had me and Larry come down here one night and pull it up. And we threw it off the Three Bridges Road into Bundy's Creek." Every time I go across there, I still think that down there somewhere is the dead-end sign. It's just a good story. But a lot of times in my stories, I like to find a spiritual truth, a lesson. And I really thought about this, that the road to the cemetery for a believer in Jesus, is not the dead end. It's not the dead end. Here's what we believe, that a person who has accepted Christ, they're following the teaching of Jesus Christ, where he said in another cemetery, the cemetery of his friend Lazarus, "I am the resurrection and the life. He that believes in me, though he die, he shall live again." I'm going to let that lightning. It's raining here. And a crow's calling. That's what I like about my soundstage here. And I'm sure you hear the rain in the background. Let me go back to my verse. Jesus said 2 things to Mary and Martha that day at the tomb of Lazarus. "I am the resurrection and life. He who believes in me shall live again." And then Jesus even added in the next verse, you can check it out. Jesus said, "I am the resurrection and life. He that believes in me shall never die." Now, I've always taken the words of Jesus at heart. That's what he said. And so for people like Mr. Frank, who knew the Lord, and people like me, and hopefully all of you, the cemetery is not a dead end. It's not a dead end. Once again, this is Curt Iles coming to you on our YouTube channel, the Creek Bank YouTube channel. I hope you've enjoyed our story. I hope you'll share it with your friends, that you'll follow our YouTube. We're just going to do these stories once or twice a week to get the word out about just good stories that we have. So have a great day. Thanks for tuning in.